Can you believe simultaneously in an Abrahamic God and democracy? As someone asked me that question the other day, and it was quite curious. I'd never thought about it. Um, and then, of course, I reflected on it. And indeed, the establishment of our democracy in the United States was a repudiation of the divine right of kings. And our founding framers were extremely explicit about the separation of church and state. Now, if you do subscribe to an Abrahamic religion, to Judaism or Christianity or Islam, then you have sanctified an omniscient, omnipotent, invisible yet bearded creator of the universe. And you have endowed a unique, solitary, patriarchal figure with a tremendous amount of power, such that he exists somewhere floating above the clouds with a moral abacus, registering every transgression, generally of the sexual variety, that you might engage in, such that someday he will have ultimate say over your eternal fate. Now, um, to give so much power to such a monistic, paternal figure suggests that you may not believe in rule by the majority or liberal democracy or representative government. Now, it is interesting that we call the Abrahamic God the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Of course, when we created this mythology, this was the context in which we were living. There were kings, and they were there by divine right. So, of course, the omniscient creator of the universe that we made in our image, contrary to popular belief, not the other way around, is this wizened old bearded man with a Merlin's cap, because that's who we believed were the fonts of wisdom at that time and most resembled the lords and the kings. And then we created these vast, elaborate churches that essentially mirrored palaces and put, God's selective priests and clergy at the front, very much like a king, kind of surrounded by his entourage. And then you have the laity, the people. Um, and this is mapped kind of in Protestant religions too. If you look at like the wardrobe of a priest, for example, he basically shares the same dressing room as a judge. And there is the judge, this generally, male patriarch that sits in front of everyone and casts judgment down on the defendant. And then you have the pews, the rows of the courthouse. And so, we've created society in many ways, kind of through this lens of monistic patriarchy, of one all-powerful man casting judgment over everybody else. And so it was an interesting question, and I think that oversubscription to the Abrahamic God is relatively incompatible with the foundations of liberal democracy. And if you are going to coronate one single individual to control your eternal fate, well, then what you might want is an authoritarian strongman to tell you what to do. So what do you think? Can you believe in an Abrahamic God and democracy. Hmm.